Guys, and welcome to another episode of the Variety Views. I'm your host, the Variety Vendor, and since my favorite pay per view is coming up, my favorite format, my favorite match, gimmick match, is coming up, the Royal Rumble. I thought, why not review the first ever Royal Rumble show? It wasn't really a pay per view; it was a TV special, and it was an idea that, of course, came from the great mind of the late great Pat Patterson, first ever Intercontinental Champion, and it was an idea that was floating around for a while, and he kept on bringing it up. And every time he would bring it up, Vince McMahon would be like, "Nah, it's not really. It sounds way too convoluted." And when you think about it, it is. But when you see it play out, it is one of the best, one of the best foolproof matches of all time. So you can even have a sucky Rumble, as a whole, but while you're watching it, there's always this sense of wonder, and not just that, but there's always the idea of like anything can happen. Even if you kind of know who's going to win, or you think that you know what's going to happen, there's still that chance where you're like, hey, they could do anything. They could do really anything. You don't know who's going to come out. So I really it's definitely my favorite match ever. So let's get right into the show. 1988 Royal Rumble. January 24th, which was, I believe, it was in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. And it was they had a very lively crowd on that show. Ontario being a very, it's definitely wrestling grounds. Ontario. You got there in Hamilton and Toronto, and I believe Canada as a whole. It's just like there are many places in Canada that is absolute wrestling grounds, and whenever you have a wrestling show, you're bound to have a very hot crowd. So great place to start off the inaugural Royal Rumble, and we start off the show with Ricky Steamboat and Rick Rude, who wasn't ravishing Rick Rude just yet. This was before he had Bobby Heenan as his manager. And this match went a while. This match went for like 17 minutes, and it felt, every minute you felt it. They were, I believe, I feel like they were kind of feeling each other out. They were trying to see where the other one is going to go. This was definitely, it really felt like this was a match that you would kind of see in the 70s. It really felt like a 70s style house show where they're going really slow. They're trying to understand what the other person is all about, because usually before you have a big show, and this wasn't considered as a big show. The first Royal Rumble show wasn't considered as a big show, so they kind of were trying things. They were like, okay, let's try this, let's try that. And that's kind of like what they used to do in house shows when, you would wrestle a person. When you see a person, when you see two guys wrestle each other on Raw, 9 times out of 10, they've wrestled each other hundreds of times in house show loops. So when you get to see them on Raw, or you get to see them on pay-per-view, it's a lot smoother than their first encounter. It's definitely, that's the reason why they just have multiple matches in house shows, and then once you see them on TV, it's usually the better match. 9 times out of 10. Sometimes the house show matches are better, mainly because you have less responsibility and less listening to the agents. So in house shows, it's like, training wheels are off. You get to do whatever you want. So this match, I kind of enjoyed. It was kind of weird seeing Steamboat being the aggressor, even though that he was kind of leaving. I would have expected this match to be more Rick Rude than it is Steamboat, but as they went on, the first 5 minutes was kind of boring. They were kind of, like I said, they were feeling each other out. But once it got going, it really got going, and that's when Rick Rude turned the tide. I rake classic heel stuff. I love when the heel is being a heel, and that's how the tides turn, is when the heel is the heel. And the babyface has to work from underneath. It's so simple, you can do it a million times and it works every freaking time. Simple old school wrestling, and I love it. The first 5 minutes, like I said, it was kind of boring. It was Steamboat just getting the better of Rude, getting the better of Rude. So the fans weren't really into it. So there was no drama to it. Usually the drama is when the fans are behind the babyface and come on, beat the heel. But when he's got 100% of the first 5 minutes, that is when the fans they don't care. So I enjoyed the match after the 5 minutes, and at the end you had Rick Rude pull the referee in and Steamboat jump off the top rope with a crossbody and hit the referee. Then Rude had him up in a Canadian backbreaker, which is which is more of a Canadian torture rack, which is very apropos being in Canada. And the ref called for the bell, who I believe was Earl Hebner. And Rude thought he won, went to the outside, and Vince McMahon is like, oh, he thought he won. What a way to ruin it. And he was like, he thought he won. And the ref was like, he called for a DQ, and Steamboat was the one that won because Rude pulled the referee in. Okay, that's fine. I have no problem with it. They got, like I said, this show wasn't a big show. So if it was at WrestleMania or at later on Survivor Series or even later on at Royal Rumble or any other pay-per-view, I would have been pretty pissed. But then again, it was fine. They had good chemistry, and the way that they got out of it, they kept Steamboat strong and they kept Rude strong. Even though they should have had just Rude win. Because Steamboat was out, was leaving. Was leaving in a couple months. That's the whole reason why he lost the Intercontinental title, was because he was leaving. So, I probably give this match 3 stars. This was a fine match. Really, like I said before, I love the old school appeal to it, and the stuff that they were doing. Stuff that wasn't even old, I wouldn't even consider it as old school. It's just freaking timeless. That's how great it is, But match itself, like I said, first 5 minutes was boring, and after all that, 17 minutes, and then at the end you get a DQ. So that always, takes down the star grade. So I give this match 3 stars. Then we get the jumping bomb angels, Norio Tateno and Itsuki Yamazaki, going up against the Glamour girls in Judy Martin and Leilani Kai. I never understood why Leilani Kai kept her name as part of the Glamour girls, because Leilani Kai is very Polynesian or Hawaiian. You think of that, Leilani Kai, but she kept that name. And also, I always get them mixed up. For some reason, in my mind, whenever I think of the Jumping Bomb Angels, I think of gold, them in gold, Jumping Bomb Angels, freaking angels. And I used to get them mixed up. I used to think that the Glamour girls were the Jumping Bomb Angels. But then I realized, that's them and those are them, and the thing is with the Jumping Bomb Angels as well is that they never had an attire that made them stand out. It was very generic outfit. Sure, it works in Japan, but it's the freaking WWF, and you're going for the women's tag titles for God's sakes. And the tag titles were later vacated, or actually pretty much like completely suspended from WWF programming because they barely had enough women, and second off, they had they didn't have anything to do with them. Like they were like, okay, we don't really care. And that was a time when women's wrestling was much more of a gimmick than a staple. So, like that's the reason why they just didn't care. And they would just listen to Moolah, whatever Moolah wants. Moolah wants this person, wants that person. But the politics got too much of a headache. They were like, you know what, let's just to forget about the whole thing. And later on, they completely ditched the whole women's division. They had women for valets and managers, and that was it. They didn't have women do anything else. Now the match itself, the 2 out of 3 falls match between the Jumping Bomb Angels and the Glamour Girls, was good. I enjoyed it. Not as good as their match that they had. I believe it was at a Saturday Night's Main Event. Either that or as the Survivor Series, they had like the 5 women versus 5 women. But they had another match. They had another match earlier, either that year or the end of '87. Either way, they have good chemistry, and this match was really good. I really enjoyed it, especially the stuff with the Glamour Girls, because the thing is about the Glamour Girls is that they're such good heels. They're such good heels. The way that they work together, the way that they kind of understand what the other person is about to do, I always enjoy. And the thing is about the Jumping Bomb Angels, sure that they have like a more Japanese style, but at the same time it worked. It worked in the WWF atmosphere. It worked for the fans. And I always say the WWF fans are the hardest to please, especially when you're bringing in something that is foreign to them. Like like an NWA style or a Japanese style or even a British style. It's always hard to break that into the WWF mindset, and whenever you bring that in, it's you don't know what you're gonna get. You don't know if the fans are going to embrace it or they're just gonna push it away. And the fans loved this. I thought that the fans enjoyed this. The fans were hot, throughout this match. And the match itself was really good. 2 out of 3 falls. And at no point did it feel like it was dragging. So that is another thing that I really enjoyed. And Jumping Bomb Angels won at the end. And with the double drop kick off the top. And even Jesse Ventura was like, I thought that was illegal, them doing an illegal move, behind the referee's back. Sure, the ref's back was turned, but at the same time, double team moves are fine. And they won with a double drop kick, and it was good. I really enjoyed it. So after that, I believe we had the Dino Bravo bench press. He was supposed to break the record, which was, I believe, 750 pounds. And he got to 710. And at the end, like, Jesse Ventura helped them out. You can absolutely see Jesse Ventura helping out Dino Bravo, but he kept on saying, no, McMahon, I never did that. And Vince McMahon kept on saying, what the hell are you talking about? You absolutely help him out. And that's my Vince McMahon commentator impression. So you get that for free. And McMahon kept on, bringing that up, and Ventura kept on denying it. So, I always enjoyed the back and forth that McMahon and Ventura had. They were one of my favorites growing up. But at the same time, the thing that I hated about McMahon is that he always made the babyfaces seem like pussies to the point where I loved the heels. That gave me more reason to love the heels. I loved the heels to begin with. But Vince McMahon always gave that condescending remarks against the heels and would back up the babyfaces no matter what, to the point where I was like, I don't like the people that you're telling me to like. I don't like Hogan. I don't care about Hogan. I like Savage. I like Jake Roberts. Those are my guys. I like those guys. So the bench press thing, it was good. I thought that it was a good segment because the fans were into it. I didn't like, personally, I don't like stuff like that, but hey, whatever works for the fans. So I can't help but give it a thumbs up. It wasn't boring, and I just didn't like it. I don't like segments like that, but if the fans like it, hey, I give it a thumbs up. It's not about what I like; it's about what I think is good. So for that alone, I just give it a thumbs up. Frenchie Martin is just absolutely amazing. The fans are just hating on him, and Mean Gene. One thing that people don't talk about Mean Gene, and something that I always hated, is his constant. It's a good thing and it's a bad thing. It's a good thing that there's no dead air. Like he keeps the viewer invested, but at the same time, it does get a little bit irritating when he's talking over commentary. And second off, he's just nonstop. It sounds like a freaking golf tournament. And he's like, and he's about to get into position, and he's about to lift. And I'm just like, I'm watching this. This isn't freaking radio. So, but God bless. God rest his soul. Mean Gene. Mean Gene was the absolute best. After that, we got the 20-man Royal Rumble. Yes, it was the 20-man Royal Rumble, the first ever Royal Rumble match. Vince McMahon looked like that he was about to have an aneurysm trying to explain the rules of the match. And then after that, Howard Finkel explained the rules of the match. So it was like, what was the point of that? One thing I gotta say about this show is that there's not a single minute in this show that felt like it never felt like at any moment that there was a dead minute. It just kept on going. Whether it was a match, there was a segment, or a commentary, they would go to commentary and they were talking. There was not a single minute that was spared in this show, and I think this show went on for like 2.5 hours, and it just breezed on by. I just enjoyed it because of that, because there was no single moment in this show that felt like, okay, there's dead air. No, they just kept on going. They were like, okay, we're up to the next thing. We got an interview, we got a segment, we got this, we got a match, we got here, we got that. It's just that's what I enjoyed about it. So we get to the 20-man Battle Royal Rumble match, I should say, and this was the only. I think this was the only Royal Rumble match that had 2-minute intervals. I could be wrong, but this was definitely the first one. It was the first match, the first Royal Rumble match, that was broadcasted, and also the only one that had 20 men, and the 2-minute thing, I kind of like. Gives time for gives breathing room between intervals, because if you keep on having like these people coming out, then you don't have moments where there's drama, there's these mini matches. So I feel like 2 minutes is enough. I think it's better than 90 seconds. That extra 30 seconds, even though that it doesn't sound like much, I think it goes a long way. Another thing is, I like the 20-man idea better than 30 men, because 20 men sounds like a good round number. And not just that, but also gives more reason for everybody to work even harder to be part of the Royal Rumble match. So you can have qualifying matches, and it's like, okay, who's going to be part of the elite group that is going to be in this 20-man Battle Royal? And it makes it that much more important. But if you have 30 men, then you got a lot of guys that are like, okay, so you're getting, whoever, just I never, I don't know. It just, for me, I think this was the first time while I was watching this show. This was the first time that I ever felt like 20 men is the perfect number, because before that I was always, all right, 30, sure, 30. But now I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, you know what, 20 would be so much better. Actually, you know what? With the pandemic and everything that's going on, I wouldn't mind them going back to 20. I think that's a great number. I think that's a great number. So, of course, you had Jim Duggan win the first ever Royal Rumble match. And while watching the match, I was like, you know what? It was a good call. It was a good call having Jim Duggan win this. Because I feel like right after Jake Roberts, he was the most over guy. And plus, you didn't have any big names on the show. Or like huge names, in matches. So you didn't have a Hogan, you didn't have an Andre, you didn't have a Savage, or even Honky Tonk Man. There were actually to open the show, they actually had a segment where Honky Tonk Man was pretty much like talking trash to about Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth, hyping up their match for Saturday Night's main event between Honky Tonk Man and Randy Savage for the Intercontinental title. So you could have had like those two guys part of the Rumble, but they went with 20 guys, and the 20 guys that they chose, some were better than others, I should say. Some of them I don't think that they've wrestled afterwards, but whatever. So Jim Duggan won, and God bless him. He was so over with the fans. He was so over. Here's how I will say, he was so over that he got a USA chant in Canada. It goes to show how over he was. So, Jim Duggan winning at the end was a good call, and I did not like. Kind of, Vince McMahon telegraphing the ending when Ventura was like, hey, how is Jim Duggan going to beat One Man Gang? One Man Gang. How are you going to get One Man Gang, a guy at his girth, to be thrown over the top rope? How are you going to do that? What would your tactic be, McMahon? And Vince was like, well, here's what I would have done. I would just pull the... And he pretty much said, like, I would pull down the top rope and, using, One Man Gang's own weight to my advantage, by, throwing him over the top rope. And I was like, man, come on. Come on. Why would you telegraph that? Just say, I don't know. I don't know how is he going to do it, but Jim Duggan, I believe in him because he's got a lot of heart, whatever. But he never said that. So, match was short. It was like half an hour. Well, of course, you got 20 men, but still, like, it was half an hour. And, Jim Duggan won at the end by eliminating One Man Gang. There was nothing on the line. Did not like that. At least a trophy. A Royal Rumble trophy. Whatever. Just say like, he won. But nothing whatsoever. Jim Duggan did not win a single thing besides that match. Didn't win shit. So, whatever. And finally, the main event. Yes, the Royal Rumble was not the main event on the Royal Rumble show. What? I guess Vince didn't, believe in the Rumble match enough for that match to go on last. So why not go on first? Would have been a great way to start off the show. But, it didn't end the show. What ended the show instead, well, actually before that, we had a contract signing. And it was one of the best contract signing I've ever seen, with Hogan and Andre. And they kept on bringing up how Andre beat Hogan at WrestleMania 3. Now, of course, that was false, but they kept on saying, Ventura kept on talking about, and so did Ted DiBiase, about how Andre actually won, in the first 2 minutes when Hogan went for the body slam, and then Andre fell on top of him, and the ref should have counted for 3 because he had him beat right there, but he didn't. And pretty much Andre said like he was going to do it again. He's going to beat Hogan. He's going to defeat him at Saturday Night's Main Event, and he will win the championship, and then he will fork it over to Ted DiBiase. Okay, you know what? I like that because the fans were into it. They hated Ted DiBiase. They hated Andre. They were full on behind Hogan, and it just made for a great segment. It made for a great segment. You felt the energy. You felt the fire. That is why, despite all of Hogan's accolades, despite of him being one of the greatest of all time, I still feel like he's underrated. I still feel like he's underrated because usually when fans talk about Hogan and talk about how great he is, they're like, oh, his promos were great. Oh, some of his matches were great. He had a lot of iconic moments. But I don't think many really appreciate how good Hogan is, how great Hogan is at milking a moment, how he's great at milking the crowd and getting the most out of even a boring segment as a contract signing, something boring on paper. It's a contract signing. The match is already set. It's already booked. We've already talked about this, but he makes the most out of it with his intensity, the way that he looks at the crowd. It's so simple. The simple stuff usually gets the biggest reactions. Just to look to the crowd, just him looking at the piece of paper and being so just, the adrenaline, you feel it seeping out of your TV screen, and you just feel every single moment, every single second of that segment. And Andre should get a lot of credit for this as well, because you could talk about how he's broken down, how he's a shell of his former self, he couldn't work or whatever. Andre was so awesome in this segment. The way that he would look at the piece of paper, and he was so nonchalant from the moment that Hogan stepped foot into the ring, and he's just standing, and he's just leaning against the ropes, and he's bouncing off the ropes just like ever so slightly, and he's just so nonchalant because he knows he can beat Hogan. He knows he can beat Hogan, and he's just so full of himself. Sits down, looks at the piece of contract, look at the piece of paper on the contract, then shows Ted DiBiase. Ted DiBiase's like, oh yeah, that's just an extra incentive, for you, my man, because you're gonna win the championship and you're gonna hand it over to me. The little stuff makes so much sense, and it gets so much out of you. And he's just looking at the contract, and then he signs. He doesn't care. Gives it over to Hogan. And Ted DiBiase just egging on Hogan. Oh, this is not just a contract. This is not just for a match. This is the death nail of your career. This is a career-ending contract. You're going to lose, and he is going to end your career. And he's just very intense, and he signs the contract. This was so awesome. I could talk about this all day, every day. But, I'm not going to. This was a 5-star freaking segment. This was an amazing, amazing segment. And, Ted DiBiase told Andre, he ordered Andre to put his stamp of approval on Hogan, grabbed Hogan's head and slammed it against the table and flipped the table onto Hogan. And Hogan is just, he looks like a defeated man. Again, Hogan is so freaking awesome. You talk about the Hulk Up. You talk about the guys that Hogan beat. But nobody talks about how great Hogan at selling and making his opponents look so good. He made a freaking table spot. His head slamming against the table and the table flipping over him. Despite all his great matches, body slamming Andre and beating King Kong Bundy in a cage and beating guys like One Man Gang and Akeem and Big Boss Man and Nikolai Volkov and Iron Sheik, all those guys, but nobody talks about how well he sells. The curving eyebrows, I like to call it the curving blonde eyebrows. The way he does it, and he just gains so much sympathy, and he looks out into the crowd asking for help. Bravo, Hogan. This is why you're the greatest babyface of all time. Um, so after that, we had the Islanders, Haku and Tama, going against the Young Stallions and Paul Roma and Jim Powers. Now, this was another 2 out of 3 falls match. Tama, of course, is the Tonga Kid. And Tonga Kid, I never knew how good Tonga Kid was. Because usually the Islanders, the Head Shrinkers, the Wild Samoans were very interchangeable. And the reason for that is because the reason why they never stuck around with me is because they used to always change up the teams. I think the Barbarian at one point was even an Islander, and they would just and even he was a head shrinker as well. Samu and Fatu, and then they switched up Samu to Barbarian, and they switched Barbarian to somebody else, and it never stuck. You know, just they would always change him up. Now that's one of the reasons why I never knew how great Tonga Kid was. And in this match, I got to see how great Tonga Kid was. Because Tonga Kid was I would say the only Samoan that wasn't your typical Samoan. Typical Samoan as far as WWF goes. Because at that time, being a Samoan means you're a savage, you're a barbarian, you're eating raw chicken, and you're just you're gouging your opponent's eyes out, and you're just you're savage. But Tonga Kid had more personality. He had more character. He would talk to the camera in plain English, and you would hear him. And he would just be like, "How do you like that, man?" And he had swag to him, and I freaking love Tonga Kid. Freaking loved him, in this match. And I would love to see more of them. I would love to see more matches that he's been a part of, because, Tonga Kid really, really freaking impressed me. And this match was freaking great. It was simple. It was a simple match. They worked on Paul Roma's leg. Started off with, in the first fall, I believe it was Tonga Kid. Actually, I want to say Haku was on the outside. Haku was on the outside. Tonga Kid was working with Paul Roma. And at one point, Paul Roma went for the ropes, and Haku pulled down the rope. And, Paul Roma fell off, and he tweaked his leg. And he got counted out. He got counted out at the end. And that, the Islanders won the first fall. So I was like, okay, cool. Now we're probably going to get the Young Stallions winning the second fall. But no, they completely stopped the match. And they were like, okay, we're gonna take a break. Then when we come back, we're gonna continue this match. That was weird. That was weird to me. This was the first time I ever got to see that. Where they would break off, the falls by showing you something else, and it was 2 segments. There was a segment with Hogan, who was pretty much talking about him wanting to beat Andre. And then they had a recap of the contract signing. And then they had a segment with Ted DiBiase, who was cutting a promo and pretty much saying, Andre's going to win. And Andre's like, I'm going to win the belt. And it just it was great. It was a great segment. And after that, they went back to the match with Paul Roma hobbling to the ring with Jim Powers. And I was like, this is actually this is actually pretty smart because you're not relegating people to watch a nothing match. You're breaking it up, and you do the recaps, and then you continue the match. It was great. Now I don't understand why you have two out of three falls matches on a show, but for what it was, I thought this match was freaking great because it was an enhancement match for the Islanders, but at the same time, I thought the young Stallions looked freaking great, and Paul Roma kept kept falling to the Islanders. The Islanders kept on working on the leg, working on the leg, working on the leg, and then finally, Tonga Kid went for the splash onto Roma's leg, an injured leg, and then Haku hooked in a single leg Boston Crab for the win, and that was it. And the way that Paul Roma was writhing in pain and he's just screaming and he's clawing at the mat, freaking awesome. Awesome stuff. The simplest stuff makes all the difference in the world. And it wasn't like the Islanders were doing crazy moves. They were doing simple stuff. They were working on the leg. They were kicking the leg, and Paul Roma was writhing in pain. Great stuff. Made it look so freaking good. So, yeah. Star ratings now. The 2 out of 3 falls match between Jumping Bomb Angels and the Glamour Girls, I give that match 3.25 stars. The Royal Rumble match itself, I give it 3.5. And the Islanders versus the Young Stallions, I give that match also 3.5. Those two matches, the Rumble match and the 2 out of 3 falls match to end the show, I thought they were, really good. As far as my rating go, for the entire show, probably give it a, I'll give it an 8. I'll give it an 8 out of 10 because it was fun. It was a fun show. And it just, at no point did I felt bored. I didn't feel, at any point, I never felt bored. And at no point did I felt like the show was dragging. It just kept on going. It just like there was something that was going on, and then they cut to something else, and then it just went back and forth, and it just gave that show such a fun feel, and it gave it that liveliness and that sense of urgency where it was like, okay, this is an important show, but at the same time it wasn't. It felt like an episode of it felt like a great episode of Raw. That's what it felt like. It felt like a great episode of Raw where you had your segments, you had your matches, and just, boom, 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 boom. And there was not a single match that I thought that was bad at all. Like I said, the first match was like three stars. Then you had the 2 out of 3 falls match for the women's tag titles. I give that match 3.25 stars. And, the two main events, both of them I give them 3.5 stars. So not a single bad match, and way better than I expected. So that is my review for the first ever Royal Rumble show, and that's pretty much it. And with that being said, like, comment, and subscribe. Ding that bell icon for future episodes on the Variety Vendor channel, and check out my next video. We talk about something else. Take care.